Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever had a dream so big it scared you? Have you ever seen a version of yourself in your mind, stronger, wiser, more powerful, and thought, how do I get from where I am to who I could be? The answer, my friends, is practice. Not once, not twice, not until it gets hard, but practice and practice until your weaknesses become your strengths, until your doubts surrender to your discipline, until your goals stop being wishes and start being reality. See, everybody wants success, but few are willing to train for it. They want the spotlight, but not the sweat. They want the reward, but not the repetition. But repetition, practice, is what separates the amateurs from the masters, the dreamers from the doers, the fans from the champions. Let me tell you something. You don't have to be born great. You just have to refuse to stay the same. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to show up again and again. Because when you practice consistently, you're telling the world, I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I'm coming for what's mine. Let me tell you a quick story. There was a boy who wanted to play the piano. He didn't have the money for lessons. So he practiced on a broken down keyboard, some keys missing, no sound on half of it. But he practiced anyway. He imagined the sound. He visualized the notes. He practiced until his fingers moved like lightning. Years later, that boy was playing on the biggest stages in the world. Why? Because he refused to let his current condition define his future potential. Because he practiced when no one was watching. Because he believed that greatness isn't given, it's earned. Earned in the moments of repetition. Earned in the dark so it can shine in the light. You want to be a speaker? Practice speaking when no one's in the room. You want to be a leader? Practice leading your own life before you try to lead others. You want to be an entrepreneur? Practice discipline when the money's not there. When the business is just an idea in your mind and a fire in your belly. Because here's the truth. Practice doesn't just sharpen your skills. It builds your character. It makes you tougher. It humbles you. It teaches you patience, resilience, and grit. Practice breaks your excuses and rebuilds your mindset. Practice says, you may not be there yet, but you're on your way. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you gave everything you had with no guarantee of success? That's what practice is. Showing up even when you're tired. Repeating even when you're bored. Getting better when no one notices. You think champions feel motivated every day? No, but they practice anyway. You think winners feel like training every morning? No, but they train anyway. Why? Because they know something most people don't. Success is not about what you do occasionally. It's about what you do consistently. Let me say that again, because somebody here needs to hear it. Success is not about talent. It's about tenacity. It's not about brilliance. It's about brutal consistency. It's not about how fast you start. It's about how long you're willing to keep going. Practice and practice. When it gets hard, practice. When it gets boring, practice. When nobody believes in you, practice. Because every time you practice, you're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. You're telling your future, I'm coming for you. Let me give you a little secret. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. And habits are built in the fire of repetition, in the quiet hours, in the moments that no one claps for, in the times when quitting feels easier, but you show up anyway. Practice is not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it is essential. And the ones who keep practicing long after the excitement wears off are the ones who change their lives. and change the world. So if you're tired, keep practicing. If you're broke, keep practicing. If you're scared, keep practicing, because it's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent. It's not about being lucky. It's about being relentless. You don't need to impress the world. You need to improve yourself day by day, hour by hour, one step at a time. And let me tell you, if you do that, if you keep showing up, if you keep growing, if you keep putting in the work, the day will come when the world looks at you and says, where did you come from? And you'll smile, because you know you came from the grind. You came from the shadows. You came from practice and practice and practice. So the next time someone says you're lucky, you tell them, no, I trained for this. I bled for this. I practice for this. And you keep going, because the only way to fail is to stop showing up. So I challenge you today. Don't just dream. Don't just wish. Don't just hope. Practice and practice again, and watch your life transform. That one truth can change everything in your life if you let it. Because most people think goals are what creates success. They believe that if they can just set a big enough target, dream big enough, write it on a vision board, say it enough times in the mirror, then somehow they'll become the person they want to be. But that's not how it works. Goals give you direction, but habits determine your destination. Everybody has goals. Everybody wants something. Everyone wants to be successful, healthy, confident, respected. But wanting is cheap. Goals without habits are just fantasies. And when life hits you, when you're tired, when distractions come, when motivation fades, which it will, you will not rise up and meet your goal. You will sink. You will fall to the level of your habits, your daily systems, your routine, your defaults. Think about it. If someone sets a goal to run a marathon, but doesn't build the habit of running daily, what happens when it's raining, when it's cold, when they're tired? They stop, because they're relying on inspiration instead of installation, on motivation instead of method. But if someone makes it a habit to run every morning, whether they feel like it or not, they don't have to rise to the occasion. They are the occasion. The marathon just becomes a checkpoint on the road they are already walking. The same is true for everything. You can set a goal to be a better parent, a more confident speaker, a successful entrepreneur. But if your daily habits don't reflect that, if you don't practice patience, if you don't rehearse your message, if you don't study your business, then you'll fall right back into your old ways. Not because you don't want it, but because you haven't trained for it. You don't get what you wish for in life, you get what you prepare for. Habits are preparation in motion. They're quiet, they're unglamorous, but they are the engine behind every form of greatness. Habits don't ask for applause. They don't need approval. They just keep showing up day after day, carving character into your life, whether you feel it or not. The truth is, goals are about results. Habits are about identity. When you focus only on goals, you chase an outcome. But when you focus on habits, you change who you are. And once your identity shifts, your actions follow automatically. A person who identifies as a writer writes daily, not because they're trying to hit a goal, but because it's who they are. A person who sees themselves as a leader practices self-discipline, not because someone is watching, but because it's part of their operating system. That's why falling to the level of your habits isn't failure. It's reality. It's predictable. It's powerful. Because once you know that, you can stop chasing shiny goals and start building solid foundations. You can stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the right rhythm. You don't need to rely on willpower. You just need to build systems that carry you when your feelings betray you. And here's the part most people miss. Your habits are always shaping you, whether you choose them or not. Every time you hit snooze, every time you skip practice, every time you procrastinate or cut corners, you're reinforcing a pattern. You're rehearsing who you'll be under pressure, because pressure doesn't create character, it reveals it. And what it reveals is whatever you've repeated the most, whatever you practiced, whatever you've hardwired into your system. So no matter how big your goals are, if your habits are weak, inconsistent, and reactive, you will always be fighting uphill. But if your habits are strong, stable, and intentional, then even when you stumble, you don't stay down. You reseat, you get up, you continue, because your habits catch you when your goals can't. We've all seen it. The person with incredible potential, natural ability, a gift that everyone notices, the person who put out better but never gets better. They shine early, they draw attention, and everyone assumes they're destined for greatness. But over time, something surprising happens. That talent begins to fade, not because it disappeared, but because it wasn't developed. And then someone else, someone who didn't have the same raw ability, starts to rise. They weren't the most talented, but they were consistent. They showed up day after day, no matter how they felt, no matter the obstacles, no matter who was watching. That's the power of consistency. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It just moves steadily, relentlessly, pushing forward while others wait for the perfect moment. And slowly, that steady grind overtakes raw talent every time talent gets comfortable. Consistency may not look impressive in a single day, but it compounds, it stacks, it multiplies. 1 rep turns into 10, 10 turns into 100, and over time, that quiet effort builds unstoppable momentum. Talent may get you in the room, but consistency decides if you stay. Because talent without practice is a stalled engine. It has power, but no direction. It looks good, but doesn't go far. Talent makes you believe you don't have to work as hard, and that belief is dangerous. It breeds laziness. It whispers lies like, you're good enough already, or you don't need to try today. But while talent sleeps in, consistency is already up working. While talent waits to feel motivated, consistency is grinding in silence. Consistency is a mindset. It says, I don't care how I feel, I care what I'm committed to. It removes emotion from execution. It doesn't wait for the perfect conditions because it understands that success is built in the imperfect ones. When you're tired, when you're frustrated, when the results aren't there yet, that's where the winners are made, not in the highlight reel, but in the habits behind the scenes. Think of the most successful people in any field: athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, leaders. They didn't get there by relying on their talent alone. They got there by practicing long after the applause stopped, by studying when no one was watching, by failing and trying again, by building routines that didn't depend on how they felt that day. Talent may have given them a head start, but consistency carried them across the finish line. In fact, some of the most talented people in the world never made it. Not because they weren't capable, but because they never built the habit of showing up. They coasted on natural ability until it wasn't enough. And by the time they realized they needed to practice, someone else had already passed them. Someone who wasn't as gifted, but refused to quit. Someone who knew that being average with extraordinary consistency is more powerful than being extraordinary with average effort. Consistency doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't wait for motivation. It just asks, what's the next step? And then it takes it again and again. And that is what builds mastery. That is what creates reliability. That is what makes people trust you, follow you, remember you, not just that you were talented, but that you were dependable, that you delivered, that you kept showing up, even when it was hard. Because in the end, talent is a bonus. Consistency is a choice. Talent might win a race, but consistency wins the marathon. Talent might impress people once, but consistency earns respect for a lifetime. It's not about how high you can rise in a moment. It's about how long you can sustain the climb. And that's what separates those who succeed once from those who succeed forever. The world loves the spot. It loves the applause, the medals, the trophies, the standing ovations. But none of those things create champions. They only reveal them. The real work, the shaping, the grinding, the struggle, that happens in silence, behind closed doors, when no one's clapping and no one's watching. That's where champions are born. In the early mornings, when the alarm goes off and sleep begs you to stay, in the late nights when everyone else has gone home and you still putting in reps, still studying, still perfecting your craft. People see the performance, but they don't see the preparation. They don't see the hours of failure, the frustration, the repetition, the pain, the loneliness that builds greatness. Because champions aren't made by one big effort. They're made by thousands of small, invisible choices. The decision to show up when it's inconvenient. The decision to keep going when no one cares. The decision to keep believing when the results don't show up yet. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty. It's real. And it's tough. That's why not everyone becomes a champion. There's something sacred about the dark. It's where character is tested. It's where discipline is born. When no one is watching, the truth comes out. Are you really committed, or are you just doing it for attention? Are you doing it because it's part of who you are, or are you doing it to impress someone? In the dark, you can't hide behind performance. There's no audience to fool, no image to maintain. It's just you and your effort, you and your grind, you and your future. Champions don't need applause to push themselves. They don't need approval to stay focused. They work when no one's watching because they understand that the real prize is not the medal, it's who they become in the process. They don't chase validation. They chase growth. They chase mastery. They chase the next level, not for the world to see, but because they know what's possible, and they won't settle for less. That's the difference between someone who plays the game and someone who lives it. A champion doesn't just compete. They prepare like their life depends on it. They train when it's boring. They repeat drills when they already know them. They study film when others are celebrating, not because they're forced to, but because they're addicted to improvement. They're addicted to getting 1% better every single day. And that addiction is fueled in private, not public. The dark is also where resilience is formed. You'll get knocked down. You'll fail. You'll mess up. But the champion gets back up, not because someone's cheering them on, but because they've built a habit of rising. They've learned to find power in persistence. They've trained themselves to keep moving forward, even when the spotlight is off and the world is silent, because they know something that most people don't. The dark is where the real work happens. Anyone can smile on stage. Anyone can give a great speech, perform well once, win a game, impress a crowd. But not everyone can be disciplined when no one's looking. Not everyone can stay focused when the results are invisible. Not everyone can keep believing when the progress is slow. That's the dividing line between average and elite. The ones who win privately long before they win publicly. Champions don't wait for opportunity. They prepare for it. They create it. And when the moment comes, they don't panic. They don't flinch. They've been here before, just not in front of you. They've rehearsed it in the dark 1,000 times. So when the light hits them, they're not surprised. They're ready. Because they were never working for the light. They were working for the legacy. Everything you want to become, everything you dream of achieving begins with repetition. Not a few times, not when you feel inspired, but over and over again until the action becomes part of your muscle memory, until your response becomes automatic, until your performance reaches a level most people will never see. Mastery doesn't come from one-time effort. It comes from repetition, from doing the same thing so many times that excellence becomes your new norm. And that's not easy because repetition requires patience, humility, and the ability to be bad before you get good. Most people quit too soon. They try a few times, fail, and decide they're not meant for it. But the truth is, you weren't supposed to get it right on the first try. Repetition is the training ground. It's where you make mistakes and correct them. It's where you build precision. It's where you sharpen your instincts. If you want to become a master, you must learn to fall in love with repetition. You must embrace the process of refining, adjusting, improving again and again. But repetition alone is not enough. You need discipline to stick with it. Discipline is the force that keeps you committed when motivation disappears. It's what makes you get up and do it anyway. Discipline is the decision to show up every single day, even when your feelings scream for comfort. It's the quiet power behind consistency, the internal agreement you make with yourself that says, no matter what, I will not quit. I will not break. I will not betray the future I'm building. When you repeat the right things with discipline, you create momentum. You start to move forward, not by accident, but by design. You're no longer reacting to life, you're shaping it. And this is where destiny begins. Not in one big moment, not in luck, but in daily habits that add up to extraordinary outcomes. You don't stumble into greatness. You build it step by step, choice by choice, through the repetition of discipline, effort. Discipline doesn't always feel good. In fact, it often feels uncomfortable. It forces you to say no when it's easier to say yes. It asks you to keep going when your body wants to stop. It calls you to act with intention rather than impulse. But it is through that discomfort that strength is forged. The more you train your discipline, the less you depend on temporary feelings, and the more power you have over your actions, your mindset. When repetition meets discipline, your potential expands. You become more focused. You gain clarity. You start to think differently, walk differently, speak differently, because you know that every small action is connected to something greater. You begin to understand that mastery is not a destination, it's a lifestyle. And discipline is what keeps that lifestyle alive. It's what protects the progress you've made, is what keeps you sharp when others get lazy, focused when others get distracted, hungry when others get comfortable. Without repetition, you stay stuck. Without discipline, you lose direction. But with both, you become unstoppable. You create a rhythm that builds skill and a mindset that refuses to settle. Repetition teaches you how to do the work. Discipline teaches you how to keep doing it. And together they shape your future. They turn your goals into systems, your effort into excellence, and your effort into legacy. Every champion you admire, every leader you respect, every expert in any field has lived this. They have repeated the same drills, studied the same lessons, practiced the same moves for years. They have trained their discipline like a muscle, refusing to give in when it got tough. What looks like talent from the outside is actually years of disciplined repetition. What looks like destiny is the result of thousands of invisible decisions.